welcome back. We're taking another look at this Toro Timecutter MX4200. In one of the prior videos, when we rebuilt the deck and I went to start it, I disappeared into a cloud of smoke. We're going to figure out why that is and get that taken care of. Now, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe if you enjoy our channel. This is a Toro branded 452cc engine made by Loncin. Model number 121-0799. With this, smoking like it was, I wanted to believe that there was gas mixed in with the oil or something like that. Smelled the oil, no oil smell, and it is at a perfect level. So that rules everything out. Didn't look great, and it did come in with low oil. Now when I go to start it up and bring it back in, it won't run whenever I take the choke off. That's normally going to tell you that you have an issue with the fuel or you have an issue with the carburetor. No smoking out of it this time, and after it ran for a while, it seemed like it stopped smoking altogether anyway. Looks to be just a carburetor issue, but we're going to go a little bit further and find out. That, or maybe we have multiple issues. Maybe we have a carburetor issue and we have a blown head gasket. We're going to find out one way or the other. Just take the whole air filter box off there. 2 10mm nuts to get it off. Whole assembly. You've got an O-ring right here on the front. Make sure you don't lose that. Now we're down to the carburetor. I'm going to take the clip off the fuel line. Twist the 1/4-inch fuel line there. Keep my light up there. If you twist it, it just kind of frees it up. And then you can pull it right off. I know that this is good fuel because this thing was out of gas when we filled it up once it was in here. Got a 10mm on the backside also. It's for the ground. If you want to test now while you're to it, if you turn your ignition switch to on, you should feel this click when it goes on. You can hear it there. And you should be able to feel it also. That's telling you if your solenoid's working. If it's not starting and your solenoid's not opening and it's not getting any fuel, that would tell you right there that you've got an issue with the solenoid on the carburetor. Buying an entire new carburetor if your solenoid's bad is probably the way to go. It's normally cheaper than trying to replace the solenoid by itself. Looks like it's got one more wire that goes through. You follow this one to the other side. Following this through, you follow the black wire, and then it comes up to the harness, goes behind the starter and up to the harness, and connects over here into the loom. You'll pull that out, just disconnect that, and pull it all the way through. It's a lot to disconnect a wire from the carburetor. And you got to kind of snake it through too. There's not a whole lot of room to get that out of there. You don't want to damage the wire. And I've got it kind of stuck somewhere. Kind of just poking on the back side. I think it needs to go up before it comes this way much further. I might just take this starter off of here, these 2 bolts, and it'll come straight off. Give me a little more room. So yeah, remove the starter to remove the carburetor, first step. Once you remove those, the starter just drops down. That's 2 12mm bolts. And your wire will just pull through to the other side. Pay attention to where it goes back to so you can reinstall it that same routing when we put it all back together. There's a little keeper there that it goes through to go to the other side. I'm going to pull this straight out, and you can do one of two things. You can kind of bend this out to make it past that curb, or what I like to do is just remove the butterfly for the choke, pull it straight out, get it out of the way, and then you can just pull that up and out. Pay attention to how the spring goes back. There is a spring there. It does have to be that same way, clipped, and then you'll rotate it, and that just makes sure that your choke comes back like it should. I'm gonna take that off, get it out of our way. Now we've just got the governor arm, and if you pull it forward and kind of push back, and it'll come up and out. Be careful, don't break that little tab. There is a little washer under here also. Let's get this thing opened up, see what it looks like. 5/32 and a 4mm fit almost exactly the same on this. I'm using a 4mm. I figure it's probably metric since it's a Chinese made engine. A lot of times these have Phillips head screws in the bottom of them on many of these carburetors. So I brought over some vice grip pliers, because what I'll do is I'll take them and I'll grab the head of the screw and turn it. These vice grip pliers work very well. It's the only thing I like to use. Got an O-ring at the bottom that seals to the solenoid. This solenoid is working. That should freely push in and out. If there's any rips or tears or anything in the wiring, you'll want to address those. Get the bottom taken off. It's a 14mm for the bottom. I always like to just kind of hold it flat and do that, because it's pretty tough to get out sometimes. Thing looks spotless. Don't see anything wrong with it at all. Take the upper jet out. It's the pilot jet. It's got that part. This piece pops out, and then the pilot jet itself. So if that's not clear down through there, you'll get surging out of your mower. And then we'll take the main jet, which is what is the likely culprit of this. Now, if you're removing this, you want to make sure you have a good screwdriver, something that's wide enough not to break the brass or strip the brass. And so I like to push everything together, just real tight together as you're twisting to remove it. Once it's removed, lightly tap. Everything's out. Jet looks clean as can be. I don't see anything whatsoever in this carburetor that would cause this not to run as soon as the choke's taken off. We're going to throw this in the ultrasonic cleaner for about 20 minutes. Just let it clean up anyway. I won't put the O-ring stuff in there. A lot of times these will swell up real bad and they won't want to go back together if you get them in that solution. But the rest of this, we'll clean it up, put it all back together, and go from there. Got it out of the carb cleaner. Doesn't look like it took some of this heavier stuff off. I tried to kind of scrub it a little bit right after taking it out. But all the internal stuff should be good. You can spray carb cleaner down through just all these holes and passageways. And then the emulsion tube, if you cover the end, you should see even spray out of all those holes. If you don't, you'll want to get something like a wire brush or a torch tip cleaner or something like that to remove anything from it. If you see any gum down in here or varnish, you don't want anything blocking any of this at all. This is completely clear, it's perfect, nothing wrong with it. Put the emulsion tube back in, the skinny side down if you got the carb upside down. Main jet. And then for the, again for the pilot jet, I like to just take a wire loom piece out because it's super tiny hole down in there. Grab a piece and just poke it right through the edge, right through the center. That you should see it in the middle going down through there. If you don't, it's gonna surge at some point. Make sure there's no blockage in that area. Should fit snugly back down in there. As you push it in, there's a flat spot that lines up at the back. Other piece just kind of pushes down in. Low idle return screw. Put it about back where it was, which is about right here. About a 1/4 inch past through the back. And that just controls how far back to low throttle it'll go. Needle and seat, I already cleaned it off. Make sure you pay good attention to along here. If there's anything along here at all, if you take your fingernail and kind of scratch and you find anything, make sure that gets removed. The tip should be a perfect tip and there shouldn't be anything on it either. If it feels jelly or if you notice it's separated from the metal in any spots, you'll need to replace that or address that. It should slide very smoothly up and down. If it's not, you want to make sure the inside here is very clean. You can use wire brush loom or like a torch tip cleaner up and down through. Whatever you'd like to clean that, as long as it's clean by the time you're done. The bowl looks very clean. I'll just kind of spray it off again. The drain goes always 180 degrees opposite of the inlet. O-rings are both on. None of these jets are clogged. Make sure that that's all free of debris. Tighten that down and then we'll put our solenoid back on. Make sure that that's all clean down in there. Again, if there's anything down in there, you'll want to clean this completely off because that should freely go back and forth. The wiring on this goes towards the inlet. Screws back in the bottom. There's also that spring on the needle that goes in between the float and the needle that you want to make sure doesn't have anything around it. Didn't really point that out too much as we're going, thinking about it. Ready to put this thing back on. We're going to use a 951-11223 intake gasket. Between the carburetor and the metal piece, you want to make sure that there's a good seal. There was a tiny little bit of something here I barely scraped off. If this is in a bunch of pieces, scrape off your old one. I'm not going to scrape off the old one. It's in pretty good shape against the block, but I want to make sure it's sealed, so I'm just going to double it up. I'm going to put another one on here. Now this doesn't match that other perfectly, but if you look, even though the holes don't line up on here, the hole goes nowhere. All that hole is there to do is nothing because it goes directly against the plate in the back and seals. So the hole does nothing. disregard it. Put this back in. I don't think, oh, the governor plate will actually, the governor will actually pull all the way out without it detaching at the back. Was not aware of that. Start routing our wiring back through to the other side. So I've routed the wire through and I plugged it back in on this side. Make sure that the regulator that's kind of hanging here stays. It didn't go anywhere. And then you just put that starter right back up in and tighten the bolts. After you get everything drained out of the tank, you can blow back through the tank, back and forth, back through the hose that comes to the fuel pump, or remove it also at your filter and make sure it's replaced. You want to make sure that's completely dried out. Just because we're having issues, I'm starting fresh with the fuel, otherwise I wouldn't really worry about it. I thought we had it all drained. Apparently there's a little bit from where the fuel pump didn't pump it all out. All right, blow that out real quick. Just gonna lightly snip just a little bit there. Got a new spot to seal to. If it was any shorter, I'd probably need to replace it. Put our 10mm back. Now for the choke plate. That's how the spring sits. And then the washer down below. Get this up here. It's in the top hole. And then it goes down and in. And sits just like this. The tab goes on the corner. Down in, and then you've got to kind of come up just a little bit and over. So that allows it as a tier. When it comes to choke, it pushes it all the way closed. Seems like maybe, not sure what's going on. Seemed a little weird. Just seems like it's not quite choking all the way like it should, but it was firing up, so I guess I'm not too terribly worried about that. Put everything back on. EPA lines and such. Put some good ethanol-free fuel in it and let's see what happens. The mystery remains. Why was the thing smoking? Why wasn't it running off choke? Really don't know in this situation. If you're having an issue with something like this, it could be a fuel flow restriction, something as simple as a fuel filter, or a restriction in the line. If your fuel line is cracked or brittle in any way on the inside, around the edge, you'll want to make sure that that's addressed. Otherwise, if you're getting a good fuel flow when your thing's dying out, say it dies out after 15 or 20 minutes and you're still getting a good fuel flow, you know you have an issue with either the solenoid malfunctioning or a carburetor issue. Right now, we're all good to go. Should you know that all this system is good to go and you've already been through it with fresh fuel and everything else and you're still having an issue with it dying out once you take the choke off, you'll want to do a compression test or a leak down test. Leak down test is always best, but that'll tell you if it's a head gasket issue. Sometimes these machines will fire up and they'll run fine for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then they'll die out because the head gasket is blowing out more there at that point. It's heated up, everything's changed. So it essentially loses all power, won't keep firing. I see that all the time on old Kohlers. Don't see it a lot on these engines, but I kind of figured that that's what was going on here since all the smoke was happening. Compression test shows that it's great. I'm not worried about that. Well, we did that before we did all the other work on it. Just a weird one that popped up. So hopefully this video helps someone out there if they're having an issue with their Toro Timecutter MX4200. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content.